Frank, I'm going to turn to you. There's this massive mental health crisis taking place right now. What can organizations do to really, I guess, mitigate the impact?
Well, I think organizations have to be very careful not to add to the stress loads that people are feeling. People are under more stress than ever. You have inflation, people unable to pay their bills, a lot of uncertainty in the workplace, uncertainty at home. They've come out of COVID, which was a mental health crisis as well as a health crisis. And, people haven't fully recovered from that. And so, as Jason said, this is a period of constant change. We know from other fourth turnings, you do level out at some point into a new period where things have realigned, been reimagined, things start to stabilize. We're nowhere near that. We've got years to go. And companies have to be aware that this is going on. They have to make mental health a priority. They have to be aware of it. A lot of them have employee assistance programs where people can reach out for help. It's not something to be ashamed of. People need help from time to time in their life. They should have no fear of going. It should be a public issue. They should encourage people to take advantage of the resources. And leaders in particular are so important at this moment in time. It's not just that, you look at a period of instability versus stability, and you realize that this notion of strategic trust, our leaders are going to get us to a safe and good future. That is more important than ever now. When times are stable and every quarter everybody hits earnings and things are growing, there's no problem. And this is this whole bull market, bear market leadership. This age of disruption is more of a bear market leadership paradigm where there's a lot of uncertainty, and the leaders must become great communicators. They need those fireside chats. They've got to get people to understand there is a plan. Things are unfolding. They're resilient. They're going to react to it. They're not going to sit idly by and be a victim, because it is act or be acted upon. And that's where we've ended up. So that notion of strategic trust, being open and honest about mental health and what's going on, all of this really matters. And that's going to culminate in your company thriving versus others. And it's all the actions these leaders take. There are going to be winners and losers. You want to be one of the winners. And a lot of it's going to come down to the leaders and how they lead their flock through this.
Frank, you bring up a great point. You said organizations need to become resilient. And I know that you very frequently say that organizations need to become deeply human. So how does an organization, I guess, strategically build resiliency into what they do on a daily basis?
Well, I think, look, I'll go into that in a minute and then pass it off to Jason, because I hate stealing the screen here.
Sure.
But, there is cognitive and emotional resilience, and you've got to build it. You've got to understand that bad things happen and you're going to work your way through it. There's a level of confidence to that. You don't want to overreact and show you're stressed out. You want to be basically, a stable foundation as a leader for people when things are uncertain or bad things happen. Bad things happen. That's just the way it goes. And how you react to them and handle them is really this final chapter that's getting written about how you responded and what the outcome was. And cognitive resilience is that ability as a leader to not talk about the negative, but to say, look, I see there's a bright light here. This is where we could go with this. To reaffirm and show people that there is a path through it, to rebuild the confidence, to win them over. And, that cognitive resilience and this ability to be a great communicator, this is the stuff that gets organizations really through these tough times. It's when you don't feel that leadership communication and that arm around their shoulder, that they're going to be in even more pain and uncertainty given what's going on. It's going to hurt the human infrastructure. Human infrastructure shuts down. Sorry, folks. That's the way it works. And if you're not leading and keeping the human infrastructure humming along so that your company can move fast, react, and take corrective measures, then you're going to struggle. Jason?
Yeah.
Jason, how about yourself?
Yeah. So I would echo that sentiment. I think the big thing I would caveat is the difference between individual resiliency versus organizational resiliency, right? And going back to the mental health issues, it's important to recognize that what we've experienced over the past few years is cultural trauma, right? It has affected us, at the individual level. It's affected us at the societal levels. And we need to come to terms in recognizing that we all of us, every single one of us has some sort of impact as a result of this trauma that is going to manifest one way or another through mental health conditions, right? I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that, hey, sometimes I'm just a little more short fused these days, right? Like I get a little bit more agitated quicker. You know what I mean? For me, last year, I was languishing last year. I mean, even just sometimes finding the motivation to do certain types of things. You know, and I was very intentional in trying to be very present with my emotions and what I was feeling. And I think for leaders specifically, the first thing leaders need to do is come to this acceptance, right? They need to accept that it's not just their people, but it's also themselves, and trying to reflect more about how they're showing up on a day-to-day basis and being cognizant of their own mental health and how that is manifesting in terms of how they're managing a team. Now, in terms of the organizational resiliency, well, this is, yes, while organization consists of individuals, the resiliency of an organization is about how adaptable you can be amidst, massive disruptive change, right? So let's use a COVID, for example. COVID was a massive disruption that nobody anticipated. And as a result, it disrupted global supply chains that we're still struggling through today. Well, let's remember the reason for that is because we've spent decades of companies focusing in on operational efficiencies and really trying to look at ways of actually reducing any kind of redundancies, in the processes in order to reduce waste and to maximize profits. But in order to be resilient, you've actually got to build in some redundancies into the system, because if one area of the system fails, you need to make sure that you can quickly shift to another area of the system. And as an organization, the structural system around functions and departments and even physical locations have become some barriers to people being adaptive and agile, right? I mean, it's been all the rage for the past 10 years now, right? There's how to become more agile as an organization. Well, being agile is about being adaptive to not just the changes, that are massive disruptions like a pandemic, if you will, but also just disruptions to competition. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge of big companies moving forward, is how they're going to be able to keep up with the pace of innovation that smaller firms, who are more agile, who can be much more adaptive and willing to embrace, an uncertain future and being able to innovate around that, are the ones that will excel in that process.
And it's